The wind howled across the endless white plain, dragging ribbons of snow through the air like ghosts. Private Samuel Carter pulled his coat tighter around his neck, but it was no use, the cold seeped through everything. His horse had collapsed 2 miles back, frozen and exhausted, and now he trudged alone through the high desert of northern Arizona, where the temperature had dropped far below anything he'd imagined possible. He had been separated from his unit after a skirmish gone wrong, left wandering the winter wilderness of Apache territory. The map in his pocket was useless, the compass needle frozen. He had no idea if he was walking toward safety or death. All he knew was that his hands no longer felt like hands, and every breath felt like shards of glass tearing his chest. Samuel had always laughed at the tales the older soldiers told about Apache rituals. Those savages dance naked in the snow, one of them had said once around the campfire, and Samuel, full of youth and arrogance, had joined the laughter. They must be mad, he'd mocked. Maybe the cold freezes their brains. The others had chuckled, proud of their uniforms and rifles, sure that civilization meant superiority. But tonight, lost beneath a sky of hard, glittering stars, Samuel would have traded all his training for a single piece of the wisdom those savages carried. By the time he stumbled into the canyon, the moon had risen high, turning the snow silver. He was half conscious, his lips cracked, eyes watering from wind. Then, through the blur, he saw them, shapes moving by the firelight, silhouettes of men and women wrapped in fur and blankets, their dark hair catching the light of the flames. For a moment, fear gripped him. Apache. Every instinct screamed to raise his rifle, but his hands were too numb to hold it. He collapsed before he could decide whether to beg or fight. When he awoke, he was inside a shelter, made of wood, hide, and woven mats, warmed by a small fire. The air smelled of herbs and smoke. An elderly Apache man sat beside him, feeding twigs to the flames. His face was carved with deep lines, eyes like polished obsidian stones. Samuel's first instinct was to reach for his weapon, but it was gone. He tried to sit up, but dizziness flooded his head. The man said something in his language, soft and low, and gestured for him to rest. Samuel didn't understand the words, but the tone, calm, firm, almost fatherly, made him obey. Hours passed before Samuel could speak. The man returned with a bowl of steaming liquid. "Drink," he said in accented English. "You almost dead." Samuel sipped. It was bitter, earthy, but warmth spread through his body like a small miracle. He tried to ask where he was, but his tongue felt heavy. The man introduced himself simply as Tacklish, and pointed to himself when saying the name. Then he gestured at Samuel. "You." The soldier mumbled his name. Tacklish nodded. "You lucky, Samuel," he said. "Wind strong, mountain angry, you live." The next day, Samuel was strong enough to stand. Outside, he saw the small Apache camp tucked against the cliff, 5 huts, 2 fires, children chasing each other despite the biting cold. The women smiled shyly at him, the men watched with quiet eyes. He had been taught to hate and fear them, but what he saw were families surviving together, people laughing in the face of the cold that had nearly killed him. Still, his pride flared when Tacklish offered him strange clothes, thin leather and fur wrappings that left parts of the skin exposed. "No coat?" Samuel asked, pointing to his military jacket. Tacklish chuckled. "Coat kill you," he said. "Too heavy. Cold stay inside." Samuel frowned. Cold stay inside. He thought the old man was joking. When the evening came and the temperature dropped, again, Tacklish gestured to him. "Tonight, you learn," he said. The old man and several others stripped off their heavy layers and stood nearly bare to the waist under the stars. They began rubbing their bodies with a mixture of ash and oil, murmuring chants in rhythm with their breathing. Samuel watched, incredulous. "You'll freeze," he shouted. Tacklish only smiled. "You watch, soldier. You feel." It was madness, Samuel thought. Complete madness. Yet as the night deepened, he saw the impossible. The Apaches didn't shiver. Their skin steamed in the cold, breath steady, movements graceful. They moved like shadows with the wind, as if the blizzard itself bowed to them. One young man motioned for Samuel to try. "No," he said firmly, shaking his head. "That's suicide." The Apache only grinned. "Then die slow in your coat." The word stung. He remembered his frozen horse, his near death, and with shaking hands, he began unbuttoning his jacket. The cold hit him like a hammer. Every nerve screamed, but Tacklish placed a hand on his shoulder. "Breathe," he said, "not fear, cold friend." Samuel tried. The air burned, but he copied their breathing, deep, controlled, rhythmic. Within minutes, something strange happened. The pain lessened. His body trembled, but not violently. He began to feel the cold not as a weapon, but as a weight pressing evenly across his skin. It didn't vanish, but it became bearable. Tacklish nodded approvingly. Good, he said. You fight cold, cold win. You friend cold, you live. That night, Samuel slept without his coat for the first time in his life, wrapped in only a thin blanket. He dreamed of his mother's voice, of the sound of rivers thawing in spring, of light through green leaves. When he awoke, the fire had gone out, but his body was warm. The realization struck him with awe and shame. He had mocked this ritual once, called it primitive. Now it had saved his life. Days passed. Samuel stayed among them, learning their ways. He helped gather wood, fetch water, even laughed with the children. Tacklish taught him that every part of nature had a spirit, the stones, the wind, the snow. You soldiers think land yours, he said one night. You take. Land not belong to man. Man belong to land. Samuel listened, humbled. For the first time, he saw how small humans were in the face of the earth's vast patience. One evening, a young boy fell sick, burning fever, shallow breathing. The camp grew silent with worry. Tacklish gathered herbs and began chanting. Samuel, remembering the medical training from his unit, rushed forward. He needs warmth, he said. Water, maybe infection. Tacklish looked at him with deep sadness. No doctor, no medicine. Samuel hesitated. He had morphine and iodine in his abandoned saddlebag, 2 miles north. He could get it, but the cold was merciless, the path nearly invisible. You not go, Tacklish warned. Storm come. Samuel looked at the child's mother, her eyes wet, her lips trembling. Something inside him shifted. If I don't go, he said quietly, the boy dies. He left before dawn, taking only a torch and a knife. The wind tore at him as he climbed the ridge, retracing the trail by memory. Several times he fell, blood freezing on his knuckles, breath growing faint. But he kept walking, repeating the old man's words, cold as your friend. Breathe. Hours later, he reached the half-buried saddlebag near his horse's bones. The sight of it broke something inside him, a reminder of how close he had been to dying alone. He grabbed the medicine, wrapped it in his shirt, and turned back. The storm had fully arrived now, snow swirling like smoke. He could barely see 10 feet ahead. He walked blind, driven only by instinct and the faint hum of a song Tacklish had taught him, about strength. In stillness, courage in the wind. When he finally staggered back into camp, half frozen, the Apaches rushed to meet him. They pulled him inside, shouting his name. Tacklish took the medicine from his trembling hands without a word and set to work. Through the night, Samuel drifted in and out of consciousness, but he heard the boy's breathing steady, the mother's quiet sobs of gratitude. When morning came, the child lived. Tacklish placed a hand on Samuel's forehead. Now you one of us, he said softly. Not because you save life. Because you give. The days turned to weeks. Samuel's uniform became tattered, his boots worn, but his spirit felt strangely lighter. He laughed easily, worked hard, even learned a few Apache words. Yet the time came when he had to leave. The snow began to melt, and Tacklish told him the soldiers were near. You go back, he said. Tell them we not all enemy. Samuel nodded, throat tight. He wanted to say more, but the old man simply embraced him and whispered, remember the cold. When Samuel found his unit again, they were shocked to see him alive. We thought you froze out there, his captain said. Samuel smiled faintly. Almost did, he replied. But someone taught me how to live with the cold. They asked about the Apaches, what he'd seen, what they were planning. Samuel paused. He could have said they were hiding, armed, dangerous. Instead, he said quietly, they're just trying to survive, same as us. His words earned suspicious looks, but he didn't care. Something in him had changed forever. Months later, the army prepared an operation against an Apache village rumored to be hostile. When Samuel read the coordinates, his heart sank. It was the same canyon. That night, he packed a canteen, a knife, and left camp quietly. He couldn't let it happen. He reached the village before dawn, breathless, desperate. The people woke in alarm until Tacklish appeared, calm and unafraid. You come back, the old man said. Why? Samuel's voice broke. Soldiers are coming. They'll attack at sunrise. Tacklish didn't flinch. Then we leave, he said simply. We take only life, not war. Together they worked through the night, guiding families to hidden paths, carrying children, covering tracks. By the time the sun rose and the soldiers arrived, the canyon was empty, silent but for the whispering wind. When the captain found Samuel among the rocks, he was furious. "You warned them," he shouted. Samuel didn't deny it. "I saved them," he said quietly. "The same way they saved me." The captain's jaw tightened. "You're a traitor." Samuel looked past him at the horizon glowing pink with morning light. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe I finally learned who the real enemies are." They court-martialed him, stripped him of rank, sent him home in disgrace. But Samuel carried no bitterness. He returned to a small town in New Mexico, working as a carpenter, living quietly. Every winter, when the first snow fell, he would walk outside, remove his coat, breathe the icy air, and remember the chant, "Breathe, not fear." Neighbors thought he was strange, standing bare-chested in the cold with his eyes closed, but he didn't care. He was alive, and he understood something most men never would. Survival was not just about strength, but about respect, respect for the world, for others, for the invisible thread connecting all living things. Years later, when Samuel was an old man, a young reporter came to interview him about his time in the army. The war stories had faded, but the legend of the soldier who lived with the Apaches still lingered. The reporter asked if it was true that they had saved his life. Samuel smiled, his eyes distant. "Yes," he said, "but not the way you think. They didn't just save my body. They saved my soul." The reporter frowned. "How?" Samuel leaned back, looking at the falling snow outside the window. "They taught me that the world isn't conquered, it's shared. You can't fight the wind, can't own the cold. You can only live with it." The young man wrote down every word, but Samuel knew he couldn't fully capture what had happened in that canyon. Some lessons can't be written. They have to be felt in the bone, in the breath, in the stillness of winter nights. As the reporter left, Samuel stepped outside one last time. The air bit into his skin, but he didn't shiver. He raised his face to the sky, closed his eyes, and whispered the old chant one final time. The snow fell softly, gently, like the touch of an old friend. And somewhere, carried by the wind, he could almost hear Taklish's voice again. "Cold is not your enemy, soldier. It is the truth of life, it reminds you you're still alive." Samuel smiled, tears freezing at the corners of his eyes, and for the first time in many years, he felt no cold.